I tried to give my baby a hypoallergenic formula, and it also causes her a reaction. Which formula was the one you recommended to your first child? One, I'm sorry, that sucks to do a hypoallergenic formula trial and see a reaction to it. One thing that I want to mention for anybody who's listening that's like, what? A hypoallergenic formula fail? Yes, some kiddos are so sensitive that they will react to the very broken down forms of the proteins that are found in hypoallergenic formula, be it the very small fragments of corn or more likely the fragments of like soy from the soy oil that is in there. And while yes, is most can tolerate things like soy oil, the FDA has even done their own like publication on this to show that even when you have soy oil or soy lecithin, there are fragments of allergenic proteins left over after that processing. So absolutely, many kiddos will pass it, but they can have a reaction to it. And that's super frustrating because you're like, this is the hypoallergenic stuff, right? This is what they're supposed to pass. Unfortunately, it's not always the case for all of us. More often than not, as we're talking about formula trials, we'll definitely work with parents to say like, okay, what have you passed? What have you failed? What elimination diet are you on right now? What do you have accessible to you? Because depending on where you live, we work with parents globally. So what you have access to is gonna be different depending on what country you're in. And sometimes even what state you're in here. It's bonkers. More often than not, quite frankly, we'll start with Neocate, and some of the others that are amino acid based can be like Elecare. Elecare was what my daughter was recommended to go to, as this person asked. But Neocate is most often what we see success with, and then there's a handful of others, right? There's a bunch of others that like we talk through and help with trials. The number one thing that I will say is if you are breastfeeding on an elimination diet and you're trialing formula, to make sure that you do the best that you can to keep your supply up while you're trialing, just in case that formula is not an automatic pass. Because the worst thing, so I've been there with many families, is if you try to switch completely over to a formula immediately, if that's not, like sometimes we have to do that. And I totally get that. If you switch over to a formula and that ends up being a fail, and then you're like scrambling to find other formulas that may be a pass, it may take some time for some of us who have really sensitive kiddos. And in the meantime, having the ability to fall back to our milk can be very helpful. So we can fall back to our milk, find another formula, trial again, that kind of thing, kind of going back and forth until we find one that is a good option for our family. But it's really hard. We get kind of painted into a corner if we let our supply completely drop. Again, sometimes it's not even an option for us, like supply's gone, it's time for a formula, or whatever other combination of many different factors that can occur. Yes, it can cause a reaction. Neocate is the most common one that we'll go with, but it really depends on what your baby's sensitivities are.